Hi, my name is Taka Sakaeda. I'm a professional chef, and today I'm going to show you the best way to make fried rice at home. We'll be going over techniques the pros use to make the perfect fried rice. This is Fried Rice 101. Fried rice is a dish that you can have any time of the day, whether that's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or snacks in between. In terms of the cooking process of making fried rice, if you have a really strong fire and a really big wok, you can be done in a couple minutes. Let's get started. One of the most important things about making a good fried rice is to make sure that each rice is separated and fried evenly. The rice that I'm using today is a Japanese short grain rice. This rice tends to have a little bit higher starch content and also a little bit higher fat content, which is what makes it so delicious. I have some leftover rice. I'm just gonna put this out on the sheet and just using my hand here, just trying to separate and make this as even as possible. Once we dry this out, the starch will be a little bit easier to manage and we'll be able to separate each grain of rice. Another reason why we wanna go through this process is so that the rice fries properly and does have a nice crispy texture, but will also help so that this pan doesn't steam up while we're frying the rice. Taking this extra step of drying it out and separating each kernel before we put it into the pan, this will guarantee you better results. So now that we have the rice pretty evenly separated into this sheet tray, I'm gonna go ahead and just put this into the fridge and let it dehydrate overnight. You can feel definitely on this top surface here, it is dry. As we flip to the other side, we can see a little bit of moisture still remaining on the bottom here. But now we can go ahead and start to crumple up each grain and separate this. So now that I have these large chunks out, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse off my hands, put a little oil on my hands, and I'm gonna start to try and separate each grain from each other. After this process, do not put this back in the fridge. We actually do want to bring this at least to room temperature. The reason for that is also temperature control as we're cooking in the wok or in the pan. If the rice is too cold, it'll then make the pan get cold very quickly, which is also really bad for the fried rice process. Now that our rice is ready, we can go ahead and move on to prepping our other ingredients. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the scallions here and just grabbing the bunch here and just cutting nice and thin rounds. There sometimes is some kind of dirt and sand in between, so I do like to rinse this after I cut them. I definitely would suggest to stay away from any ingredients that are very watery so that this pan doesn't steam up while we're frying the rice. So we're trying to avoid any kind of moisture while we're having the rice in the pan. We're gonna just set this aside. We're gonna work on the onions next, just keeping the back intact here. Go ahead and make incisions here. And then from here, we're just gonna cut against the slices that we made earlier. I have here 5160 size shrimp. These are already been peeled and deveined, which you can purchase just as is. These particular eggs, these are Jidori eggs, egg specific from certain types of chickens. It has a really deep yellow color, which is gonna be a great visual for the finished dish. If you can't find eggs like this, just fine to use regular eggs. We're just gonna go ahead and beat the eggs until both the whites and the yolks are fully incorporated. We're ready to cook. What we're gonna be doing here is cooking everything in stages. This is all about temperature control and making sure that the wok and your pan is super hot throughout this entire process. Generally, the home kitchen, the flame is much weaker than what we are used to in a professional kitchen. And so by separating each of the ingredients and cooking them separately, this is really gonna help to ensure that we can maintain that temperature. Because of the shape of the wok itself, it is in a bowl shape, so it actually increases the surface area. And so the way it's designed, the flame should be carrying up the sides of this wok, and so whenever we're cooking in the wok, we want to make sure to be spreading out all the ingredients all the way up to the sides so that we're maximizing the surface area. So now we have our wok, it's getting pretty hot. I'm just going to add some oil here. So we want to make sure that the entire surface is covered with the oil. The oil is smoking, and so I'm going to just take this off the heat at this point, let it cool down for a second, and I'm going to put the eggs in and mix it really well. So the reason why we're doing this, the pan is already hot and you can see the eggs, even with the residual heat, is already kind of cooking through. What I'm trying to achieve here is no color. And again, we're using these beautiful Jidori eggs, that bright yellow color. So I don't want any browning to occur from this process. Right before it's fully cooked, I'm gonna pull it out and place it into the side dish. Now that the eggs are done, I'm gonna put the wok back on the fire, getting the pan back up to really hot temperature, just enough oil to cover the surface. Also, we wanna only partially cook this. We don't wanna cook this all the way through. And so once I put this in, I'm gonna season all the shrimp and just let it sit on one side. And once we kind of see the color start to come out, it shouldn't really take long at all. I'm gonna go ahead and toss this and try to get the other side to cook about the same amount. This should really take less than a minute to get this to halfway cooked. And you can see now the color has changed and kind of this orangish pink color is now coming out from the shrimp. And the moment that we see that any of the raw color on the surface is gone, we're gonna go ahead and take this off the heat. This is ready. This is the most critical and important stage. And so we wanna really get this pan now ripping hot as we can get it. What we're trying to achieve is to get all the moisture from the surface of the rice to expel and evaporate. And if the wok is not hot enough, we end up pulling out moisture from the rice, and it's actually gonna create more steam and more sogginess, which is the opposite of what we're looking for. Smoking hot pan, throw our onions in. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a light seasoning. Getting some nice color. And for the amount of shrimp and the amount of eggs I have, I'm gonna use about maybe half of this rice. We're trying to utilize the entire surface area of the wok. Now I'm putting the onions on top of the rice so that the onions can stop cooking, or at least slow down the cooking of the onions, and just having the rice underneath so that really focusing now on frying the rice. Trying my best to utilize the entire surface area of the wok. So I'm just pushing everything out, and so that I have one layer of rice inside the wok. It actually has a lot of surface area. If we want to maximize and utilize that, which is going to help with the speed of the cooking, but also so that the pan doesn't steam and it's not overloaded with product. We can go ahead and hear now that the rice is starting to pop. And so this is a good indication that now the water is evaporating from the rice and it's starting to crisp the surface. You do want to be careful here not to over fry this. You can see here also there's a little bit of clumping happening. This is pretty normal. Once we incorporate all the other ingredients, this will help to separate all the kernels one more time. And so at this point, I think we're ready. I'm going to turn this temperature back up, and I'm going to reintroduce the other ingredients. So I'm going to put in the shrimp here and the eggs, and make sure that the eggs are nice and broken up. And now I'm going to go ahead and incorporate all these ingredients together. And through this process, I am looking at the rice and making sure and trying to separate if there are any clumps at this moment. Do the final seasoning of black pepper. Introduce the soy sauce here, and I'm just going to add this to the edge of the wok. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want really the aroma from the soy sauce, and I don't really need so much of the salinity. I can actually see here on the edge, the soy sauce kind of burnt onto the edge, and so a lot of that salt is still remaining on the side of that wok. In this fried rice, I really want to highlight the shrimp and the eggs. So I'm using salt as my primary seasoning and using the soy sauce as an extra aroma and also kind of adding umami to the dish. Just going to go ahead and add a handful of these scallions right at the end. They're nice and thin, so it really doesn't take much to cook through the scallions. So I'm just using the residual heat here just to incorporate the scallions and add this beautiful green. So everything is now cooked. I'm gonna finish this with a little bit of scallions just for some color. And there you have it, the perfect way to cook fried rice. And now it's time to taste. I'm gonna try to get a little bit of everything in this bite. And what's really important here is all the different textures that's happening here. Shrimp is beautifully cooked, nice and tender. The egg has a nice lusciousness and softness to it. The onions has that little bite in the center, and then the scallions have a different kind of almost crunchy kind of texture. And then the rice itself has nice little crust on the outside, but still very soft and fluffy in the center. I think that this came out really well, and having all those different flavors and different textures in here, I mean, this is a great fried rice. Fried rice to me is very nostalgic. This is something that I grew up eating a lot. And so anytime that there's any rice left over, or you just have a lot of ingredients, a lot of vegetables that you want to throw into one dish, this is a great way to utilize both. Just by learning a few techniques and understanding a few concepts here, you can go ahead and expand your fried rice adventure. Oh yeah, fantastic.